The rain had stopped just before dusk, leaving the small coastal town of Newport washed clean under a fading orange sky. Inside a quiet hospital room, Emma Carter sat by the bed of her stepfather, Tom Willis. Her eyes were tired, but steady. Tom was 60, a mechanic his whole life, the kind of man whose hands told stories of engines and years of hard work. Now those same hands looked fragile, veins visible, skin pale. The heart attack had nearly taken him, and with it, almost everything her mother, Linda, had built. Emma, 28, a nurse at this very hospital, had spent the last 3 weeks juggling double shifts and calculating bills no one could afford. Insurance covered some, sure, but not enough. Not the endless scans, not the medication, not the debt that sat like a shadow on their kitchen table. She'd thought about it for nights. Then one morning, she walked into the billing office and quietly emptied the savings she'd spent 5 years building. Money meant for her advanced nursing certification, her dream, all of it, gone in a single signature. She told no one, except her half-sister, Amber Willis. Amber was 31, beautiful, confident, golden hair always perfect, her nails a fresh coral shade that caught the light when she talked. She worked in public relations at a real estate agency, smooth with words, flawless with smiles. Emma trusted her, believed family meant something sacred. So she told her, just her. A week later, Tom was better. Linda decided to host a small dinner to celebrate his recovery. Their home smelled of rosemary and garlic, the smell of hope. Emma arrived early, helped her mother set the table, pressed napkins into perfect folds. Amber came later, her husband Kyle beside her, a quiet software engineer with kind eyes and a permanent look of exhaustion. He carried a bottle of wine. Amber carried her presents. Dinner began softly. Tom made jokes, Linda laughed, Amber poured wine, Kyle nodded politely. Emma sat between her mother and Kyle, smiling at every story, hiding the glow of quiet pride in her chest. She knew what she'd done, and that was enough. But then, Tom lifted his glass. His voice trembled with emotion. I just want to thank whoever paid off those hospital bills. You saved my life. You saved my peace. The table went silent. Emma's heart raced. Her mouth opened. But before she could speak, Amber leaned back in her chair and said softly, "It was me." The words sliced through the air like glass. Linda gasped. "Amber, sweetheart, oh my God, you did that?" Tom's face filled with disbelief, then gratitude. "You didn't have to," he said, voice breaking. Amber smiled modestly. "It just felt right, Dad." Applause, a toast, laughter. And all Emma could do was sit there, gripping her napkin until her knuckles turned white. Across the table, Dr. Jake Miller, a new physician at the hospital, watched quietly. Tall, mid-30s, sleeves rolled up, eyes observant. He noticed the flicker in Emma's expression, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes. When dinner ended, Emma excused herself, her voice barely steady. Outside, the night was cold, the air sharp with salt. She stood by her car, looking back at the glowing windows of the house. They were laughing inside. Her mother beamed. Amber was radiant. Emma whispered into the wind, almost to herself, "It's fine. It's for him." Then she drove off into the dark, headlights cutting through the fog, unaware that Jake stood by his own car across the street, watching her leave. He knew. Something about that dinner didn't sit right. And something told him this story wasn't over. Morning light spilled across the small apartment, soft, gray, and heavy. Emma Carter sat at her kitchen table, still in her hospital scrubs from the night before, a mug of coffee growing cold between her palms. Her phone buzzed again and again, family messages lighting up the screen, her mother's cheerful emojis, her stepfather's thank you notes, and at the center of it all, Amber's name, showered in praise. Emma stared at the screen, the words blurring together. Then she turned the phone face down, breathing out a shaky sigh. For everyone else, last night had been a miracle. For her, it was a quiet heartbreak that no one could see. By the time she arrived at the hospital, the corridor smelled faintly of disinfectant and rain. Jake Miller was already at the nurse's station, his tie crooked, hair damp from the drizzle outside. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said softly, offering her a paper cup of coffee. His voice carried that calm, grounding tone that made her want to exhale. Emma took it, forced a small smile. "Who needs sleep when you have caffeine?" she said, half a joke, half a shield. Jake studied her face for a moment. "Something's bothering you," he said. "You're not great at hiding it." Emma avoided his eyes. "It's nothing I can fix," she murmured, then turned to walk down the hall. That afternoon, while charting patient notes, Emma overheard two nurses chatting near the break room. "Did you see that article about Amber Willis?" one of them said. "She paid her dad's medical bills, out of pocket. Can you believe that?" The other nurse laughed. "What a saint. Makes me feel like I should call my parents more." Emma's hands froze over the keyboard. The screen blurred in front of her. An article? She opened her phone. There it was, an online feature from the local paper. Amber Willis, the daughter of the year. A glossy photo of Amber and Tom smiling in front of the hospital entrance. Linda by their side. Emma wasn't in the picture. Her chest ached, the kind of ache that burned quietly. She locked her phone and set it face down again, just like that morning. Meanwhile, across town, Amber sat at her desk in a bright glass-walled office. Balloons and a E. Small, "You're amazing" banner hung over her monitor. Coworkers passed by with smiles, offering congratulations. Amber smiled back, practiced and polished, but inside, the applause felt hollow. When her husband Kyle came to pick her up, he barely looked at her. "Saw the article," he said as they got in the car. Amber kept her eyes on the windshield. It wasn't a big deal. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's the problem. It wasn't yours to do." His words hung in the air. She said nothing. That evening, Emma stopped by her mother's house to drop off Tom's medication refills. Linda opened the door, her smile bright. "Amber came by earlier," she said, eyes shining. "You should have seen how humble she was about everything. We're so lucky, Emma. 2 daughters with such big hearts." Emma nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, lucky." Tom waved from the couch, wearing his worn mariner's hoodie. "Hey, kiddo, you doing okay?" She forced a smile. "Always." She stayed only 10 minutes before heading out into the damp coastal air. The sky was bruised purple, the waves somewhere in the distance. Her phone buzzed again. Jake, this time. "If you ever need to talk, I'm around." She didn't reply, but she smiled faintly, then whispered to herself, "You wouldn't believe it, even if I told you." Across town, Amber sat in her parked car outside their apartment, makeup streaked from tears she hadn't meant to cry. She replayed the moment at dinner, the look on Emma's face, again and again, until the guilt pressed too heavy to ignore. Kyle's voice echoed in her head. It wasn't yours to do, and for the first time, she started to believe him. The sky over Newport was the color of slate, clouds rolling low and heavy as Emma Carter stepped out of the hospital after another 14-hour shift. The rain hadn't started yet, but the air already tasted like it would. She tugged her jacket closer, exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. For days, she had smiled through rounds, forcing her voice steady when patients thanked her. But the moment she clocked out, the silence roared back. She walked toward the parking lot and saw Jake Miller leaning against his old blue pickup, arms crossed, coffee in hand. His hair was messy, his scrubs wrinkled, and somehow, he still managed to look calm. "Hey," he said softly, "you look like you've been fighting ghosts again." Emma tried to smile. Yeah, ghosts don't clock out. He handed her the coffee. Then at least take this weapon. Their fingers brushed for a second. The warmth was unexpected, gentle, grounding. They sat in the truck, rain beginning to patter on the windshield. Jake spoke first. You don't have to tell me what's wrong, he said, but I can tell it's eating you alive. Emma stared out the window, the wipers squeaking softly. You ever keep a secret because the truth would hurt someone you love? Jake nodded. Sure. The trick is figuring out who you're really protecting. That question stayed with her long after she drove home. That night, Amber Willis sat in her car outside their apartment, the glow from her phone screen lighting her face. The article about her was still pinned on the town's newsfeed, hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, and all she could see was Emma's expression at the dinner table. Kyle's voice echoed in her head again. It wasn't yours to do. She shut off her phone, pressed her forehead to the steering wheel, and whispered, What have I done? By morning, she couldn't stand the silence. She called Emma. The voice that answered was calm. Too calm. Hey, Emma said, her tone guarded. I need to see you, Amber whispered. Please. They met that afternoon at Harbor Brew Cafe, the small seaside shop where Emma sometimes studied between shifts. The scent of cinnamon and ocean salt hung in the air. Amber arrived first, hair damp from mist, trench coat buttoned tight. Emma walked in minutes later, eyes tired but fierce. Amber started, I know you're angry. Emma sat down slowly. Angry doesn't cover it. Amber's fingers twisted around her mug. I just wanted Dad to be proud of me, Em. You've always been the one everyone looked up to. I thought if I did something good. Emma cut her off, voice trembling. Something good. You stole my sacrifice, Amber. You took what I gave up for him, my savings, my future, and turned it into your story. Amber's eyes filled. I didn't know it meant that much. Emma's laugh was bitter. That's exactly the problem. You never know. The cafe had fallen quiet. Even the barista had stopped steaming milk. Amber looked down. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to hurt you. Emma stood. Then stop pretending. Tell them the truth. Amber's breath hitched. If I do, Dad will be crushed. Mom will hate me. Kyle will... Emma's voice softened, breaking. You already lost me. The words hung there, heavy and final. Amber's eyes followed her as she walked out into the gray drizzle, the bell above the door echoing like a sigh. Outside, Jake's truck was parked by the curb again. He didn't ask questions, just handed her a dry towel from the glove box as she climbed in. They drove in silence for a while, waves crashing against the cliffs below. Finally, Jake spoke. You did the right thing. Emma stared ahead, voice low. Then why does it feel so wrong? Jake glanced at her, his tone steady. Because truth's a slow healer. But it works. They drove on, the headlights slicing through mist, both of them knowing that somewhere inside a storm had just begun, one that neither of them could stop. But maybe they could survive. Days passed, but they didn't feel like days anymore, more like long gray stretches of silence that refused to end. The wind over Newport carried the chill of the ocean, and Emma Carter felt it in her bones every time she stepped outside the hospital. She kept moving, kept working, pretending that silence didn't follow her home every night. Jake Miller saw it before she said a word. He'd catch her in the hallway, eyes tired, hands trembling just enough to give her away. You've been avoiding me, he said one morning, voice quiet, almost teasing. Emma forced a smile. You notice everything. He leaned against the counter. You can't keep carrying something that heavy forever. She didn't answer, just turned away, the truth burning behind her ribs. Across town, Amber Willis sat in her car outside their mother's house, engine off, hands clenched around a folded letter she'd written and rewritten. Every version started the same. I lied. Every version ended with tears. She'd talked to her priest that morning. He told her that confession doesn't free you from pain. It just gives pain a place to go. Amber wasn't sure she was ready to let it go, but she was more afraid of keeping it. That evening, her message went out to everyone: Mom, Dad, Emma, even Jake. A family dinner, my house. Please come. No details, just that. When Emma arrived, the air smelled like roasted chicken and candle wax. Amber had set the table perfectly. Linen napkins, good china, soft music in the background, like she could disguise guilt with decoration. Tom smiled when he saw her, still pale but stronger, his eyes bright with warmth. Linda fussed over everyone, nervous, fluttering from seat to seat. Jake stood near the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching quietly. Dinner began with small talk. Weather, work, nothing that mattered. Then Amber's fork clattered against her plate. She stood up slowly, voice trembling. There's something I need to say. The room fell still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. She swallowed hard. When Dad was sick, I told you I paid the hospital bills. Her eyes glistened. That wasn't true. It was Emma. Tom froze. Linda gasped, hand over her mouth. Amber's voice cracked. She used her savings, all of it. She gave up her dreams so you wouldn't have to worry, and Her breath broke. I took it. I took the credit, because I wanted you to be proud of me. Silence. Thick. Endless. Then Tom's chair scraped the floor as he stood. His voice trembled. Is that true? Emma nodded faintly. I didn't want you to know. I just wanted you to get better. He crossed the room and pulled her into a shaking embrace. You saved my life, sweetheart, he whispered, and I never even knew. Linda joined them, tears spilling, arms wrapping around both daughters. You girls, you've heard enough. No more secrets. Not in this house. Amber dropped to her knees, tears streaming. I'm sorry, Emma, I'm so sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Emma looked down at her, eyes wet, heart softening. You were wrong, Amber, but you're still my sister. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Tom chuckled through his tears. Someone pass the pie before it gets cold. Laughter broke through the tension, thin, shaky, but real. Jake watched from the doorway, his eyes warm. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. Later that night, Emma stepped onto the porch. The rain had stopped, the street glistening beneath the streetlights. Jake joined her, hands in his jacket pockets. Looks like your storm finally passed. Emma smiled faintly. No, she whispered. It just turned into rain. 6 months later, the sea breeze carried spring through Newport again. The storms were gone, replaced by sunlight that bounced off the water and drifted through open windows. Emma Carter sat outside Harbor Brew Cafe, the same spot where everything had once fallen apart. But today, her hands didn't shake. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching people pass along the boardwalk. Her face had softened, still the same steady calm, but lighter now, as if a heavy coat had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Inside, laughter drifted out from behind the counter. The world hadn't changed, but she had. Amber Willis appeared across the street, carrying a box of flowers for the local church fundraiser. Her hair was tied back, no makeup this time, her jeans smudged with soil. When she noticed Emma, she hesitated, then smiled. A small, careful smile, the kind that asks for permission. Emma waved her over. You're late, she said softly. Amber laughed, a little nervous. Traffic, or maybe I was just scared. Emma shrugged, a faint grin tugging at her lips. Scared of coffee? Scared of memories? They both laughed then, quietly, honestly. Amber sat down, setting the flowers beside her. I've been volunteering, she said, at the church and the community center. It's weird, but It feels good to do something that isn't about me. Emma nodded. I'm glad. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't sharp anymore. It was gentle, like the sound of waves against the pier. Across town, Linda was in the kitchen of the family home, baking lemon pie with Tom. The radio played an old country song, and Tom hummed off-key. You think they'll like it? He asked, sprinkling too much sugar on top. Linda smiled. Even if it burns, they'll eat it. It's family. That evening, everyone gathered at the Willis house again. Same table, same seats. But everything felt different. Amber brought flowers for the centerpiece. Emma arrived with pie from the cafe, one she baked herself this time. Jake came too, carrying a bottle of red wine, his sleeves rolled up, that calm half-smile still on his face. Tom raised his glass halfway through dinner. You know, he said, I used to think gratitude was about saying thank you, but it's more than that. It's about staying when things get messy. And we did. Linda squeezed his hand. We sure did. Amber's eyes welled up again, but this time the tears came with a smile. I still don't deserve what you gave me, Em. Emma reached across the table, touching her sister's hand. Maybe not, but you're earning it back. Jake leaned toward Emma. You never told me if you got into that advanced program. She smiled, eyes sparkling. I start next month. Scholarship covered it, and Tom might have had something to do with it. Tom winked. Maybe I talked to a few people. Maybe I wanted to make things right. The room filled with laughter, the kind that comes easy, the kind that means healing. Later that night, as everyone left, Amber stopped Emma by the doorway. She held out a small frame wrapped in brown paper. What's this? Emma asked. Open it. Inside was a photo of their family taken that night, the dinner when everything changed. Beneath it, etched in delicate silver, were the words, Forgiveness is the heart's truest medicine. Emma stared at it, the glow of the porch light warming her face. She looked up at Amber. You're getting better at this. Amber smiled. You taught me. Outside, Jake waited by the truck, watching the sisters talk. When Emma walked over, he handed her his jacket against the chill. Ready to go? He asked. She nodded. Yeah, I think I am. They drove down the coast road, the sound of waves following behind them. The town lights shimmered in the distance, soft, golden, alive. And for the first time in a long while, Emma felt whole. No bitterness, no secrets. Just the quiet truth that forgiveness had done what anger never could. A new beginning. Not perfect, not simple. But finally, real.